Okay. So a friend of mine's mom passed away a few weeks ago, and I didn't
Yes.
So Gavin Simpson lost his mom, and I want to do this year in dedication of Natasha Bas Beula. He's a wonderful person, Gavin. I didn't actually. Every Gavin I've ever met is a lovely person. Hey, Gavin Stoller.
I saw him at the base a few times. He told me.
Yeah.
I saw him saying Kaddish. Yes, such a good old Gavin Simpson.
I joined this year. If I wasn't here tonight, I don't think that comment would have been made. I think I know this Gavin. Isn't it?
You do know.
One who lives in John?
You do know Gavin Simpson. He's a wonderful person. Really, he's
a top guy. Very good guy.
In fact, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. You know him.
Okay,
that's an older photo.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have long hair anymore. But
he can't hear. Well, I don't see him often. I very rarely.
Yeah. So anyway, Gav, let's just get on with the shir. Just a dedication. And Gavin, we wish you long life. Kevin, you can begin.
Okay, so we're continuing on the theme of malachas, and the next subsection is about dropping hints. So it says one is allowed to drop a hint to a Gentile to perform malacha, provided that A, one does not receive any direct personal benefit from it, and B, the hint is not given in an instructive manner. For example, A, if there is sufficient light with which to read, but one requires additional light, one may say it's rather dark in here, and that's regarded as a non-instructive hint. One may not say, however, please do me a favor, there is not enough light in this room. That to me sounds very similar, but it said you can't say that. There's not a light in this room. It's an instructive hint. Okay. To open a sealed envelope, one may say, I can't read this letter because it is sealed. That's a non-instructive hint. But one may not say, whoever opens this letter will be doing me a favor. That's instructive or direct. To have the light turned off, one may say, what a waste of electricity. That's a non-instructive hint. But not, why didn't you turn out the light last week when I was trying to sleep? That is regarded as instructive. Okay, so instructive hints may be given before the onset of Shabbos on condition that there will be no direct personal benefit. Under circumstances where a substantial financial loss might be incurred, whether or not one gains direct personal benefit, a hint may be made in an instructive manner, even on Shabbos itself. This helps to prevent a person from being tempted to do the malacha oneself. For example, whoever puts out this fire will be offered a big reward. And then you have unsolicited malacha. Unsolicited malacha is as follows. If a Gentile performed the malacha which was not requested, but which was done for the Jew's benefit, one may not derive direct personal benefit from it. However, if the work was carried out for the sake of a Gentile, a Jew may derive benefit from it on Shabbos. For example, if a Gentile turns on a light for his own use, one is permitted to read with that light. This permission does not apply if the product of the Gentile's work is muktzah. Example, if a Gentile milks a cow, one may not drink the milk on Shabbos. Okay, let me just go over that at one point again there. It says one may not derive direct personal benefits. Gentile, if the Gentile turns to the light for his own use, he started reading anyway. It was already on and he was reading. Didn't just switch on the light and it was on and no one was benefiting from it. He was actually reading there. Then you can go into that room and read from there if he's reading there, and that's okay. So just one other thing. Yeah, so this instructive, you can't make direct hints or direct references to a malach.
Can I ask you a question, Kev? Just two questions. The first question is, before Shabbos, can you be direct in all your instructional observations if somebody works for you?
I wonder, it says, sorry, here. Okay, where does it say? It actually said it here. It says so, yeah, okay, that's the next thing I was going to discuss. That's going to the next time. We'll do it again, just to the first sentence. Before Shabbos, one is permitted to request a Gentile to perform a specific task in return for a fixed charge. Okay. Hold on one sec. Some for Shabbos.
Okay. And
fixed charge. I'm just saying. Oh yeah, like if you say, please switch off the lights after we eat dinner, like you say, I'll tell them on Thursday.
I'm saying if all the instructions are explicit, because I've had somebody doing stuff for me and they don't catch a hint. I said, it's dark here.
I know.
When I'm reading. And they say, that's nice. You know. And I say, would you like to read something? No. you know.
And what do you do?
So what do you do? So, I wonder why, if before Shabbat, you can instruct, and also we need to learn malachas on how it works, that you can pay a non-Jew to work for you on Shabbat, to clean the house and everything else and prepare the meals, if they're earning on Shabbat as a result of you, or it's difficult. Even at shul, they pay you for laning and you work on Shabbat. You pay for the prep before, but it's difficult to understand.
It's good to ask is Akiva Brett. That's the guy.
Brett. Yeah, absolutely.
He might even know the malacha about non-Jews. That's a good guy to actually ask.
He knows a lot.
I just want to raise one thing quickly, just 2 seconds, we need to start that. Is that often they do it in Israel, and they've done it here at Nando's as well, is that you can prepay your meal before you pay off the Shabbos and you go and eat there. I think it's quite common in Israel. I think there are a few restaurants that do start open and do that. So it's the same type of thing.
Yeah, they even got a hotel in Israel where they've got an electronic lift, and even the waiters at
a lot of hotels have.
And
Shabbos lift.
Correct, Shabbos lift, and also when they take down your order, if you go to the restaurant there, they go by memory. I don't know how it works. I haven't been to one of those places. I can't afford to eat out in Israel. Anyway, let's get started. Arthur, that was once.
You came to my hotel.
Arthur, I must tell you something. You remember that 127,000 shekel shawarma and kafar saba? Let me say no more.
Thank God. No, it was 150,000. They wanted to charge you.
You mean Zim dollars? You mean?
No, I landed up in ICU.
Yes, at the Beilinson Hospital.
Yeah.
From that.
And then they asked me for 30,000 shekels deposit. I said, I don't have it. They said, well, what should I do? I said, you can put him out. No, we can't. He's already sedated. I said, then you have to wait for him afterwards. I went to a lady downstairs and she knew his case. She said, visa, she knows this, and she covered it immediately. Thank God, I tell you. I mean, can you imagine like 600,000 shekels?
Hashem makes miracles.
Rand.
Hashem made miracles. It was even more. All right. A big thank you to Hashem for everything He does for us. Guys, quickly, before we do the Gemara, I want to just relate an incident today. I went to a shul to daven outside area, and I went to the loo, and when I came out, this woman locked me inside with the door and everything else, and the security gate.
You're joking?
No, I'm not joking. And I'm going on the gate, and I'm trying to bang to open up, and one of the guys at the shul sees me. He acts quickly and gets some keys, and he opens up for me. Now, I don't dislike this person who ever locked me in, because I'm sure if they realized, they would be mortified. They're a from person. But I want to contrast two different individuals. The one individual, this woman, that I heard her briefly call when I was in the loo, hi, like if anybody's around, you know what I mean? Because she went past the male toilets. She didn't say, I'm locking the doors now. Is there any person in the toilet? Just say yes. Okay, so she locked me in, and it would have, without the miracle of Hashem, it would have been embarrassing to start banging on the gates there. She locked me in, this unconscious woman, not a bad woman, unconscious of anything. I don't know why she's got the power of having keys. And yet, by the same token, this man that was davening was so attuned to his environment that the minute he saw me, he worked it out, got up and took keys to get it to open up. If you contrast these two different opinions of somebody that can stick you in hell and somebody that can redeem you from hell, it's about being sensitive to other people. And these are two from people, which is why I often say Judaism itself is not the problem. It's like psychotherapy. You can learn all the tools in the world. If you don't apply your psychotherapy, you're not going to heal. Judaism is a tool. People see this as a from person being selfish or a from person being generous. It has nothing to do with it. It's about character improvement. And if you saw the two contrasting characters, it's unbelievable how somebody without bad intention can damage you and somebody that's aware can save you. And I just want to say Hashem taught me a wonderful lesson today.
Some people don't have common sense. That's it.
Yeah. It's amazing they call it common. Exactly. Yeah. It's like a superpower today.
Hi, what? She said hi, what she thought so.
She said, she just walked.
What does that mean?
I just heard this faint voice, hello, somewhere outside. Okay. She didn't say, I'm locking the security door. Is there any male in the toilet? Just holler yes.
Is anybody here? Anybody in here?
Yeah, or anything, Kevin, just to indicate that she's locked. I went through this concept of Barreira yesterday, on Thursday. I don't want to go through it again. We're just turning to another factor. The Gemara turns to another subject regarding which the Kabb of a cistern is a factor. We're on the 51st daf in B4. Rav Elazar said, if one is selling a pit to his fellow, once he hands him its cover, the fellow has acquired it. So, guys, the Gemara wonders, what is this case to which this applies? Because if the buyer wants to effect acquisition, how can he do it? Generally, guys.
What did you say, to effect?
I'm saying if I'm buying something from you. I'm saying, listen, firstly, we're talking about if the fact that he basically wants to hand over either ownership or use of the cistern, which is like a well of drawing water from party A to party B. Now, generally, when you're handing over something, let's just talk about purchase. Say this guy's purchasing the rights or gains rights to something. There are certain ways to purchase. So the Gemara doesn't understand why in this case handing over the cistern, which is like a manhole cover, means that the second person now has ownership. Because this is what Rav Elazar said. He said, if you're selling a pit or you're selling a well to his fellow, once you hand over the cover, the fellow has acquired it. You're selling it. Okay? So obviously we're not talking about public property. Why? Because you can't sell a pit in the public domain. You've got a pit maybe you've opened up to the public, or maybe not, but it's still in your main and in your domain, and you haven't relinquished the pit itself or the well where you've got water in the middle of a desert. So Jew A is selling it to Jew B. Rav Eliezer said once he hands him the Kabb, the fellow has acquired it. So the Gemara is saying, listen, this is unusual. Why? Because if you want to acquire an article, how do you acquire it, guys? We've learned this before.
You lift it up, you hold it, you lift it up.
Yes, so that's
Kinyan, make a kinyan.
That's exactly it. Kinyan means you have an act of acquisition. It's a proprietary act, which makes it seem it's as if it's yours. So in other words, there's one or two ways to do it. If you buy property, you make an improvement to the land by started toiling the soil as if you're going to plant something, or you started a little bit of construction. That's an indicator. With an animal, you've got ways to draw the animal close to you. You can also lift something up, like Hagba. There are ways to acquire it with physical actions. Okay, so acquisition is obviously a way to do it. That's absolutely correct. It's an act of chazaka. Okay, and how else do you acquire something, guys?
Through contracts and money.
Absolutely, Gavin. Through a shtar, through a contract, through adim, through witnesses, and through money. So So basically, the Gemara is saying, what's the case where this applies? If the buyer wants to effect acquisition through money, let him acquire the cistern through the payment of money. And if he wants to effect acquisition through chazaka, let him acquire it through an act of chazaka. That means a physical acquiring. What legal significance is there to basically handing over? What do you call it? Handing over the pit, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, guys, did you ordered prep? Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Good. All right.
Yeah.
So as long as
a great day.
all right. So it's not a problem. Okay. Let's just go on. So what's this thing, Gavin, about handing over the cover? Because basically real property can be transferred from the possession of the seller to that of the buyer in one of three ways. Exactly as Gavin said, through payment, as Kevin said, through chazaka, the buyer's performance of a proprietary act. You're using the property or physically improving it in some way. That's in Kedushin 26a. Or through a document, a shtar. So once the buyer has paid the seller cash, he receives like a title deed, or an ownership deed, or that article itself, and he can begin using the property. It's legally his. But if he accepts the cover from the seller, like the manhole cover or the cover to the well, he's done nothing to effect acquisition. That's what Rashi says. So the Gemara explains Rav Elazar's ruling. Actually, it applies to a case when the buyer wishes to effect acquisition through chazaka, but ordinarily the seller must tell the buyer, go perform an act of chazaka and acquire the property in order for his chazaka to be effective. In other words, you don't have to get this instruction from the seller if you're doing it in the seller's presence. Okay, it has validity if the seller sees it, but if the seller doesn't see it, he has to explicitly authorize the buyer to perform it. That's according to the Rosh. Okay. So obviously, if it's in front of the seller, it's unnecessary for the explicit authorization. So when he says go perform an act of chazaka and acquire the property in order for his chazaka to be effective, it means that he's not going to be at the time where the other guy leaves. And Rav Elazar informs us that once he hands him over the cover of the cistern, it's as if he told him, go perform an act of chazaka and acquire the cistern thereby. In other words, the buyer is then authorized to perform the chazaka even in the seller's absence. So handing over the cistern doesn't in fact itself effect acquisition at all, but it contains within it an implicit understanding and authorization for the buyer from the seller to effect acquisition through chazaka. That's what Rashi says. Okay, so there's a related ruling. Rav Hushia ben Levi said if one is selling a house to his fellow, once he hands him over the keys or the key, his fellow has acquired the house. Okay. Now, believe it or not, they even had locksmiths in those days. It might not have been as sophisticated, but you have a tunnel and you have a drum, and houses needed to be secure. But the Gemara is still perplexed because what is this case to which this applies? Again, it comes up again. If you want to effect acquisition, you do it, guys, through what? Gavin?
Binyan or a shtar.
Shtar, exactly. Through money. You can do it through money. You can do it through his payment of money. Or if you want to effect acquisition through chazaka, you can do that, which is a proprietary act. And by the way, it's not just a proprietary act without money being paid, but it means there's what you call a cooling off period, which we've touched on before. That you've got a certain amount of time where you can have buyer's remorse. Remember, we discussed this. In other words, there was the deal might have been misrepresented or whatever the case may be. So it depends who has ownership. But the act of chazaka, as Kevin says, is one. But what's the legal significance to handing over the key? Because you haven't done any proprietary act. You've just got access to the place. So the Gemara explains Rav Yoshua ben Levi's ruling. Actually, it applies to a case when the buyer wishes to effect acquisition through chazaka. But ordinarily, the seller must tell the buyer, go perform an act of chazaka and acquire the property in order for the chazaka to be effective. Now, remember, if the buyer does it in front of the seller, the seller is given acknowledgement. When he says go and perform an act of chazaka and acquire the property, it's when it's not in the seller's presence. I think it might have to be in front of other witnesses, otherwise how does he know he's done? So basically when he hands him over the key, it's as if he told him go perform an act of chazaka and acquire the house thereby. It's implicit in that particular act. Another related ruling, Reish Lakish said in the name of Rav Yanai, if one is selling a flock to his fellow, once he hands him over that which draws the flock afterwards, the fellow has acquired the flock. Now we're going to see what this means. So the Gemara is ruling, basically, what's the case where this applies? If the buyer wants to effect acquisition through drawing near. So what's this thing of drawing near? Because Kevin mentioned this, the ownership of movable objects, like livestock, Kevin, can't be transferred through the payment of money. Okay? The transfer is, money is a part of it, but the transfer is generally accomplished by the buyer taking physical possession of the object. So like one such method, which is effective, is like with small animals, for example, sheep and goats, is this thing of drawing it near. Mashicha. Remember we learned about Mashicha? So the buyer pulls the object towards himself, or in the case of the animal, causes it to walk by striking it. Not hard for all the animal lovers out there. Nobody's beating anybody. Just like gently, get it to nudge it a bit. Okay? Where's this in Kedushin 25b in the Mishnah and Rashi's commentary on it? Obviously, bigger animals, it can be a little bit more taxing, so there's got to be slightly different methods. So that's something that you've got to bear in mind. All right. So it says, let him acquire the flock by drawing it near. And if he wants to effect acquisition through handing it over, let him acquire the flock through the handing over of the animals themselves. Okay, so let me just explain what this handing over means. Yeah, okay, how do I put this?
Wasn't it Damon? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
The animal comes onto your land. Remember we did that a few months ago.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
You get the animal to come onto your land.
Correct.
You learned that.
Correct. So Mashiach is drawing it near. That's for small animals. But for bigger animals, right, or the acquisition of movables, like big animals, right, it's also in Kedushin, but that's called Masira. And it's required but the sale has to take place exactly as Kevin said, either in the domain of the third party or in the public domain. Okay? It can't be in either of their domains. Does that make sense? It's got to be a neutral territory.
So what did you say, public domain? What was the other one you said?
Third party domain. So like if I'm buying... hang on, Gavin, if I'm buying an ox from you, a big ox, I can't do it at your house and I can't do it at my house. I have to do it at Kevin's house in Sandringham because it has to be, neither of us have to own it. It has to be an objective third party, which is either privately owned or the public domain, which is not exclusively yours or mine. Okay?
And what about using what you said earlier, using witnesses? If you got like 100, let's say 100 large animals, it could be quite a mission to put them in the public domain.
No, understand. But what I was talking about before, for example, is that when the object itself is not movable, you've got a problem then, especially when the other person isn't there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Then you have to do it, obviously, at the location where it's stuck to. So then I'm suggesting, I don't know if it's true, you'd probably need witnesses for the simple reason there is it's not mobile and somebody has to see you've done, in fact, the acquisition. Okay, but let's just give me a chance. In these places, the acquisition can't be accomplished through drawing near because, guys, that method is only effective when done in an area reserved for the buyer's use. Like maybe the buyer and seller have a joint domain, or the alley of a public domain. That's called a simta. So that's set aside for semi-private use. We're going to learn that in Bava Basra, in the 76 daf, please God. Okay? But this is not the case of drawing near, because that's for the buyer to use. This is in neutral territory. So Masira, handing over, is in a public domain or neutral territory. Okay, as long as you understand the differences. It's generally used for movables or bigger animals, etc. Okay, general movables. So the Gemara explains, what's the legal significance to handing over that which the flock draws the flock after it. Okay, so we say in the Gemara explains Reish Lakish's ruling. Actually, it applies to a case when the buyer wishes to effect acquisition through drawing near. But ordinarily, the seller must tell the buyer, go draw the object near and acquire it in order for his act of acquisition to be effective. So if it's not done in front of the seller, he must instruct him, go draw the object near and acquire it. And Reish Lakish informs us that once he hands him over that which draws the flock after it, is as if he told him, go draw the flock near and acquire it thereby. So I just want to tell you what we're talking about when it says that which draws the flock after it. Okay? So in Babylonia, they called it a shepherd's bell. In other words, it was like a certain signal and all the animals used to follow it. You've got what you call a sheepdog. Arthur, what's those dogs called, the sheepdogs?
Collies.
Border collie. Yeah. So that obviously that's used not to generally draw the animal near, but to push the animals and chase them within a certain direction. And then you've also got a certain animal that might be the alpha male. Guys, I'm hearing background noise.
No, it's also just mute him.
Okay, I've muted him. All right. So what I was going to say is you also have what you call a leadership alpha male animal. So what's that, Kevin? Is that you get that with primates, you get that even with goats, etc. I saw this film. It was like a Jane Austen sort of film called Far From the Maddening Crowd. And what that film was about, I mean, in one case, it was in Scotland, right? And there was this cliff face. You know, in Scotland, there's oceans and a cliff face. And the animals panicked. It was dark. And some of the leading animals ran off the cliff, like the goats. Every other animal fell off the cliff, ran after it. Not bright creatures. And they go after. So if you've got somebody like a border collie or an alpha sheep, or an alpha ram or a bell or something that entices the other animal, you can draw the animals near. That answers Gavin's question, because Gavin says, well, how do you take 300 animals and get them to move? It's not so easy. They use certain techniques in animal husbandry to control the animals. So you have to take that as a technique and draw the animals towards you. So either do that in front of the seller, but in public territory, not in seller or buyer territory, or the sellers can instruct you to do it, but you don't do it in your own territory. It has to be within the public domain. So that's the actual act of handing over. Okay?
But if they're public domain, so they have witnesses, so that the whole event is
I'm assuming. I don't know more than you. I'm assuming. Okay, so that was the custom in Babylonia. So obviously Rav Yaakov, so Reish Lakish says that in Babylonia they use a shepherd's bell. Rav Yaakov says it's reference to the goat that walks at the head of the flock. Now, he's not criticizing Reish Lakish or disagreeing. He's saying in different communities, they had different ways of leading the animals, right? So the Gemara cites a parallel for Rav Yaakov's interpretation. As a certain Galilean expounded before Rav Chisda, when the shepherd, meaning the shepherd, Hashem is the master shepherd, is angry with his flock, meaning any of his creations, his human creations, he blinds the leading goat. So let me just explain to you what blinding the leading goat is. It means Hashem chooses leaders that are going to cripple the people by their bad decisions. So in other words, I remember the late Jeff Kaplan wrote on a YouTube blog once, which was very clever, America will get the president they deserve. Yeah. So yeah, and I thought it was very clever. And also, so I'd like to, on that note, guys, we've got about 7 minutes left. I just want to share the screen for the new upcoming Mishnah. Why? Because obviously to do the Mishnah in the merit of Gavin Simpson's mother is also meritorious, because Mishnah and Neshama have the same letters. And we're going to read it. Gavin, you're going to read it. One Gavin's going to read it in behalf of another Gavin.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And they have the same initials also.
Same initials also, exactly. So, Gavin Simpson, Gavin Stoller, exactly. So, I'd like Gavin Stoller to read it.
Thank you. I'll do it. Mishnah. The Mishnah continues this discussion of a ball. Is one word, ball belonging to partners. If the first one covered the pit after you used it, and the second one then came to use it and found it uncovered, and he did not cover it, the second one is exclusively liable for any damage it does. The Mishnah now discusses the liability of any ball. If one covered a pit properly, and nevertheless an ox or a donkey walking over it fell into it and died, he is exempt. If he did not cover the pit properly, and an ox or a donkey fell into it and died, he is liable. The Mishnah turns to a case where an animal was caused to fall into a pit by an external factor. If the animal fell forward because of the sound of a person's digging, the owner of the pit is liable. If it fell backwards because of the sound of the digging, he is exempt. The Mishnah discusses what type of damage the owner of a pit is liable for. If an ox with its utensils fell into a pit and the utensils broke, or the donkey with its utensils fell into a pit, drop it down again, sorry. If an ox with its utensils fell into a pit and the utensils broke, or if a donkey with its utensils fell into a pit and the utensils tore, the owner of the pit is liable to pay for damage to the animal, but is exempt from paying for damage to the utensil. If an ox that is deaf, deranged, or young fell into a pit, the owner of the pit is liable. If a young boy or girl, or a Canaanite slave, or a maidservant fell into a pit and died, the owner of the pit is exempt.
Excellent, Gavin. Excellent. So, all right, guys. There's just something I want to share with you, you gentlemen, you good gentlemen over there. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So we've got about 4 minutes left. Arthur, are you offline? Are you online, Bubble? How's it, mate? Can you stand for 4 minutes? That's all I'm asking. Okay. So it was an interesting book. I was reading on Shabbos, apart from the Gemara, this Rabbi Rush in Forest Fields. Okay, now, I tell you why, because sometimes when you learn Gemara, the difficulty is that you're dealing with a very technical sort of thing. This particular Gemara, we were blessed that it was pretty easygoing. Sometimes what we do is very technical, and sometimes you miss the beauty and the relationship and the connection between Hashem and the technical detail. So one of the things I've been working on lately, I'm certainly a beginner, is sometimes I find normal davening to be very stifling. And it's a wonderful opportunity because we've got Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv. I've been particularly lax. I was good in my Kaddish, but with COVID, etc., we couldn't be exposed to the minyan. And I've been trying to work on just generally talking to Hashem in a respectful way, in a conversation, and just discussing things I'm worried about, my needs. And I used to feel something like that, guilty, like I felt selfish to discuss about me and my needs. But the thing of it is that Hashem, I've noticed when you speak to him and you say, look, I'm worried about this. I don't know how to approach this particular subject. This is what's happening in the business. I don't want to get punitive with this person, but I really feel taken advantage of. And just help me calm down and just not see the bad in them. What do I do? When do I get aggressive? When do I show compassion? Try and give me a bit of guidance, what you want me to learn from this particular situation. You're obviously doing it for my good. It feels very upsetting to me, but I know you're doing it for my good. Can you give me a little bit of guidance here, what I mean to learn from the situation? And I think he better do it, or personal discussion with Hashem, when you're having conversations all the time. Now, I know that people say better do you have to mention with your mouth, but I believe Hashem is telepathic, that sometimes That's what I like about COVID, by the way. I don't like COVID, but wearing the mask is when you talk to yourself. Nobody can see your lips moving when you're talking to Hashem. It's great. But apart from that, sometimes you have thoughts in your head and you want to express them. Some people say you have to make them audible like normal davening. But I think at the end of the day is also to take every time there's something good that happens, like even if it's mana, you say to Hashem, you know what, I noticed that, and I really appreciate your help with that. And just to feel a little bit appreciative and gratitude, because if you're unhappy, a lot of it is from the missing towel syndrome, which means it's like you're looking at a beautiful floor and there's a crack in the towel missing, and our eyes focus towards what's missing. Why? We're not ungrateful people. We're not negative, but our whole job as human beings is to fix things that are broken. So our eyes and our mindset focus to that and not all the good things we have. So, it takes continual work, this relationship with Hashem. And the one thing I like about Breslov or Hasidic people is they've got a joy to their Judaism. They don't feel it's a burden. They enjoy the privilege of being able to talk to Hashem and have a relationship with their spiritual father. And sometimes very misnagdish people are great learners, but they always feel it's this big burden being Jewish. And, it's this heaviness. They come in the element in Tisha B'Av, because they know how to be miserable. But sometimes in Purim, they don't feel the joy, like with Simchat Torah. Sometimes it's a joy just in singing and being able to see and being able to walk and being able to be alive and to acknowledge and thank Hashem, even for the bad days, because it means to know what a good day is from a bad day means you've got to have your cerebral functionality. People who have had dementia strokes don't have that. So we are grateful. Guys, have a wonderful Shabbos.
James, before you go, James, before you go, if you ever want to learn what you just said, try looking up some old people for a while and realize that they've gone from being perfectly healthy and the next moment having their life taken away.
Absolutely. Arthur works with people that are older and they've lost things that we take for granted.